All right, I will present you a little bit what's Fragcolor on the more of the sort of technical deep dive. So, but before starting, there's something to I'll give a little bit intro about me and a little bit what's the status. So, for the past 15 years, I think I've been working in the game industry, and I've been mostly in Japan for the 10 plus years. So I've been working in the game industry in Japan, and so all these companies, I cooperated with many big companies, and specifically the focus was writing game engines. Um, but for the last 2 years, preceding the last 6 months, though, I've been working for Ethereum, building one of the Ethereum 2 clients. And so basically what happened 6 months is I realized that this was the right moment to actually execute my master plan I was preparing since I was in my 20s pretty much, where um, I used to love virtual worlds, I used to love MMOs, I used to love RPGs, but the most relevant thing is that after playing many games, like for example World of Warcraft and so on, I actually spent a lot of time and built a business in Second Life. I'm not sure if you guys know it, and nowadays it's kind of funny though because everybody is talking about metaverse, is talking how virtual worlds are supposed to be, but I actually have seen it 10 plus years ago. So anyway, this was this crescendo. I always wanted to build something cool regarding virtual worlds, and let's call it the metaverse, but it's starting to become a cheesy word recently. So what we're building at Fragcolor, and as I was mentioning, this was a journey, and what we're building is actually a decentralized gaming engine. We use the word gaming because it means that we're building both a game engine and a multi-platform app to deliver those games interactive experiences. So it's like both the engine and the portal. As I mentioned, and also my team, we are game industry professionals mostly. Actually, only me as blockchain experience and a new hire that I have very soon coming. But the rest of the team is mostly on the game industry and game engine. To make an easy analogy of what we're building is a little. I would say the popularity and platform penetration of Roblox meets the ease of use and creative power of PlayStation Dreams. And yeah, that's a good chance to. Are you guys familiar with those Roblox or PlayStation Dreams or anything? It would be interesting to know if.
I mean, with
if you guys.
Roblox, yes. PlayStation Dreams,
Right.
not you know.
The relevant thing of PlayStation Dreams is that when in Roblox, you have to use an editor to actually, and very weird, well, not weird, but old ways to build things like Lua or whatever it is. And the studio and the toolbox. PlayStation Dream changed the game by far because it's the sad part is it's a game on the PlayStation, but they have this. The tooling is quite amazing. You can build everything and program everything with your PlayStation controller, which is a great jump of UX. So that's the bit of inspiration for us with Dreams. And sorry, but I'm very dehydrated recently. So the problems, I will go through a little bit what problem and solution is, and then jump a little on the tech rather than markets and other stuff. It's the biggest problem that we are trying to solve is the fact that the current metaverse, or whatever we want to call it, it's basically built on top of current game engines, which is Unity and Unreal, basically. And those engines are packed with cool features, but they were built many years ago. So even before Web3, actually, and let alone Web2 or let alone Web3. And the key point though of this is that games made with Unity and Unreal, even if they were built with the same tool, are absolutely not interoperable. And pretty much this is one of the key points of what we're building. Another key point is content creators and freelance artists. Those guys in the industry often sell their creation cheap to the developers of a game, not directly to the players, and so their profits are very small. And anyway, acknowledging artists and creators is almost something that doesn't exist in the game industry. It's just publisher and developers, as well as other problems that are more maybe you guys are more familiar with, which is scalability or anyway economical issues or exporting value of items in and out of games and so on. So the problems many, big and complex. But we think we have a solution. I think that in 2021, all the necessary technology to make it happen are available. So these are our points that we are working on. Actually, some of these points are already a work in progress, and there is actual substantial progress. Some of these points are getting started. But the reason that we're building all this big amount of tech is that all of these points are connected. First of all, yesterday on Twitter, somebody was saying, "Oh, you should split. It's too much." I'm like, I'm building an orchestra. I'm not building a guitar. So yeah, there's many things, but I think they're all connected. But again, so the reason that we're building on this is not strictly. Of course, we care about final users, but the intermediate between final users for us is creators. So our biggest priority is letting creators receive fair royalties, and so directly from users and players. And I think that it's quite original and interesting to use, for once, in a good way, NFTs, and specifically layered and nested NFTs. I have a better description about this. Maybe we'll jump on it after a few words about it, and you can also ask questions in real time because it's a real key point. So leveraging NFTs, specifically nested NFTs, we can allow a rich degree of both combination, composition of user-generated content, and as well value distribution and interoperability. Just a few more words on this slide. In general, platform games are meant to be living marketplaces, basically, where every entity in the virtual board could be an NFT. And another key aspect we are taking care of, very relevant, is storage. We are employing multiple strategies. The very basic one is actually storing everything on chain using some interesting ways to compress things, but as well as a solution. The idea here is to make games unbreakable and available forever. Most of the games I've played in my 20s, specifically MMOs, were literally destroyed by the publishers, and this is pretty much became a mission for me. And obviously also forking games, for example, is a very interesting, you can see with World of Warcraft Classic or all the others, private servers, and modders in general. I think I have an interesting slide about this. Maybe I should actually use it. Yeah, why not? So, but this is something that specifically D games and many here already touch. So it's nothing really new, but I think it's very relevant in general for people that listen to us. Another. What else? So, so basically all these points that are in this list, in my opinion, lead to magic, which is total interoperability. And as I mentioned before, games made with Unity and Unreal are not interoperable, but with Fragcolor's tech, games are absolutely interoperable instead, and they can interface with each other without friction. So this is actually the only thing that matters if we want to call the metaverse open, interoperability of everything. And it's something I want to talk about because I often hear that NFTs are by default. There's many people putting in their mouth the fact that NFTs are interoperable, but I think that right now we only have seen NFTs being viewable rather than interoperable. You can just see that you own something, but there's no real connection with that. But I'm starting to introduce this concept to investors, and they look at me in weird, but it is actually the reality. I will jump 1 second to. I wanted to show more about fragments. I think I have a slide here actually. So when I was talking about, is it here? Okay. When I was talking about those nested NFT layers, I have a bunch of slides that I actually didn't introduce in this presentation. I have to jump to another file, but it doesn't matter. I will start with this one. So the idea here is that this is strictly actually smart contracts. Just to be a little bit more technical, this is actually the way our smart contracts work. And the abstract idea behind Fragment is the fact to promote sharing, composition, and interoperability. So that's why we are storing on-chain data plus logic in a special format that we have. But at the same time, the idea is, as you see, number 4 is also distributing value to contributors and also stakers. This is a feature of the future token, but I will focus more on the contributors. So that means that, as you can see, there's different creators, and on top of these different creators, there's other creators that can assemble things. So you can imagine a person can make a particle effect or an animation or a wheel, and somebody else makes an engine, and somebody on top makes a car. And when this car is being sold, the distribution of value is fair to everybody that participated. This is something that never happens in the game industry today, because you, for example, have Unity Asset Store. You as developer pay $50 for a model of whoever freelance artist, and that's the deal. It's over. Potentially with your game, you make millions, but the freelance artist just got $50, and that's very unfair, I think. Instead, with our system, you don't pay anything. You stake, rather, with a time lock, so you don't lose any value to the freelance artist, but you include it. It's on chain, this relationship, and the artist will get forever royalties on top of it. I have a better. I have a few. Let me see if I can switch on the fly to this. Oh yeah, I can share this stuff instead. So yeah, that's how this is new. Actually, I never presented this to anybody. It's a very good test. Maybe I will stop after if you have any questions. But this is pretty much how our smart contracts work. We have a template contract, which is these nested layers of you can assemble and so on, and everything gets stored on chain. As you can see, there's this squares here, because the template has I would say two storage slots. Let's just say one is immutable and another is mutable. So the mutable part can be opt out, because we kind of want more immutability. But think about this. For example, we are making a card game, and we want to update the parameters of skills, like you might want to rebalance your game as it goes, as in damage values or mechanics. So those little variables will end up to the mutable part, and so you can automatically update. But I would suggest, this is something I'm still thinking about, because it's something that creators need to be aware of. But I would suggest that you use this mutability with care, because this is something that in general, with programming in general, mutability is a dangerous thing. But that's the gist. And as you can see, you build this template and you end up with, I don't know, a game as top level template, as you can see in this thing. And then you can res it. Resing it automatically on chain creates a white label contract that is owned by the owner. There is no intervention from us. It's all on chain. And it creates these entities, and the owner sets up parameters like, I don't know, 1,000 editions or infinite editions, a price, minting price. We are investigating. I'm curious to, in the future, talk about this maybe on Discord. Doesn't have to be here, because there's lots of controversy today of gas wars for NFT drops. So we added the Dutch action, but I think that somebody should actually find a solution for. But anyway, so there is this thing that you as owner have a template, which is an NFT itself. And from that NFT, you can spawn your own contract, which is an entity, and you do your market and so on. And that contract though becomes, you lose the mutability part, but you gain the mintability part. So this is a very cool thing, that it means that you can make, via our system, that's partially one of the reasons why we're rebuilding a game engine, is that games can be dynamic. So literally on minting, people can inject things, code, pieces of game. And so on minting, games can become unique. Each copy of the game can become unique. So that's a very, and by the way, it's not just game, but also interactive experiences. In fact, actually, in a few weeks, we are releasing something that's a little bit more competing with stuff like art blocks. It's on-chain shaders that on minting gain unique variations and so on. So that's I'm not sure. It's the first time I explain it, but if you guys wanna, I'll have a sip of water. If anybody has questions,
Yeah, I mean, this slide here is one I'm struggling a little bit to take in. I sort of know what you're doing, having spoken to you before about it, obviously. Some of the other guys maybe haven't.
Maybe this one can help a little bit more.
Okay, let's take this.
So that's it's talking about this basically, but that's the idea. So the fact that these fragments are nested, in the sense that, as you can see on the top, actually I can. I think it's this you can probably see my laser. So on this top, and let's go to the logo. This top fragment here, it doesn't work. Oh, here is the top level fragment that you would put on sale. So here it would be the one you would rest basically, and going back, and it's the game. Let's just say it's the game. The game itself is made of other things, and these other things are also fragments. And so, for example, this house itself is another fragment. It could potentially be here. It could potentially be owned by somebody else, and you just included it in your game. And the same goes for this character. Of course, for ease of viewing, the other items are not, but they are supposed to be fragments as well. So of course, could be also this fragment, and this character could be a fragment. The character itself is made of sword and character, right? So and these are all levels. These are all NFTs that NFT templates of the previous slide. So if that clarifies a little bit, and then what happens is that the owner of the top level, in this case, what happens is that the owner of the top level fragment raises it as a NFT drop, so as an entity, and he gets his own contract, and he calls it, I don't know, nested fragments game, and then sells the game by itself. And every time he sells a copy of the game, everybody that cooperated here gets money, basically, or anyway, Ethereum or whatever it is. And potentially the person is selling this game didn't make the model here, or didn't make the sword, or didn't make the house, and these are different people that it doesn't even know, but it just included via the system and smart contracts, and so these guys will get value as well. And yeah, I hope that makes it a little bit clear as compared to where we came from, which is this slide here. As distribution.
Hi Giovanni, it's Bruno.
Yes.
From Cartesi.
Hey.
Thanks.
Hello.
Thanks for the presentation. I have a doubt. In the first slide, you show all these, I would say, angles of concerns and problems that needs to be tackled in the decentralized gaming, and so far, and sorry, maybe I got it wrong and would like a clarification. Your proposal here is to implement a solution of a NFT based on layers that can stratify ownerships or be very flexible on how those ownerships and content creator and connecting the whole ecosystem. On the very first bullet of your presentation, you talk about the game engine that is old and etc. Your project is concerned as well to decentralize the whole gaming, or you're only concerned with this approach of you have a centralized game or whatever, you're building on top, providing for this game in this NFT layer that's a multi-layer that gives a lot of flexibility. What of those two options you're focused on?
Yeah, no, nice question. It's the hardest one. No, we are decentralized everything.
Right.
There is no way I can plug the system into Unity. There is no way I can plug this into Unreal. That's why we have to rebuild the whole thing.
So decentralizing everything is an interesting point, because might have an interesting synergy with Cartesi itself as well.
Oh yeah, actually, Ed was I was looking forward to talk at some point. Yeah.
And I would like to hear from you in terms of if, for example, a virtual machine that boots an entire Linux and give you flexibility of a program that you can choose, and that can be completely verifiable, and provide the same guarantees of the blockchain that you choose to be on top, which is flexible as well. If it's something that helps solve your problem. Well,
yeah, actually,
I don't know if you have a problem.
No, we do actually, and it's something I at some point in one of the many calls we had with Ed, we were talking about Cartesi. Actually, I think Ed actually introduced me, and then many other people talk. I think some of my investors invested into Cartesi as well. And so this was a team that came often, and so I'll tell you the reality is that we actually built a VM ourselves, sort of. So this whole engine, but there's still synergies. Wait, this whole engine basically is built on top of I don't really call it a programming language, but it's it's almost a programming language. It's the way we express data. So if I can go back just to visualize something in the slide, it's this way to express data and logic, and we formalize it into a language itself. But yeah, and so it's a very fast interpreted. It's the core of this engine itself, and maybe I can just skip to the technological stack, and so I think that to go back to your thesis, I think that is completely valid, and it's the only way you can achieve all this. But at the same time, I think that there's also synergy with Cartesi, because there's always the first of all, they can work together, and I think that there's always opportunity to use, like you mentioned, a full Linux machine for certain kind of tasks that our high-level programming language will not be able to tackle. Because what we're trying to replace, and why we decided to build the whole engine based on this new programming paradigm, is the no and low code aspect. So we want to this is where, when I started, we got this inspiration from PlayStation Dreams. So we want people to actually be able to code in an extremely easy way without even touching code itself. And so that's why we built the whole tech around this. And that's why also one of our priorities is user experience. And so the engine will be built on top of it. But I strongly believe that when we get game studios or players that are a little bit more technical, they would want more tools, and so that's where our conversation can definitely start. So we can actually have a separate call at some point. I think I would be interested to. But it was very interesting that you asked it, because I strongly believe that the solution, and partially I think it's probably your thesis as well, is to fix the programming paradigm, and it's a necessity, and definitely we see today lots of, basically the 90% of, and lots of pressure even received from investors, is of these games built that just inject NFTs into centralized systems, and it just misses the point. But indeed, we want to decentralize the whole stack. But one thing about this, and do you want to add something, Bruno, before I just I start talking and never stop? But if you want to add something, please.
No, I think it's great. Very clear. Yeah, indeed, we should jump in a separate call and get a little bit more tech team to
absolutely
explore fully the synergies here. But yeah. Thanks for the clarification, Giovanni.
And I would just to connect to this. Sorry, I'm skipping slides. I wanted to show in a different order, but I'm being lazy. So just to connect to this, because it's very interesting. What we are, the journey is complicated. So we started we are starting with selected partners, we say, in terms of market, and so we target this NFT crypto community with. And the reason behind this is the fact that we still don't have the user experience bits. So I guess with you guys, I can be a little more technical. So I've been 2 years both working with my day job, involving Ethereum 2 and so on. But at the same time, and whatever time I had left, I actually worked on this engine itself. And what I have is the, I wouldn't say backhand, but anyway, the rough part of it, which is almost final, but it's missing this user experience, this easy to use part. So to make it easier for going into market, we are helping developers and programmers and artists to actually start building some drops while we have this framework that is not hard to use, but it's just you need to be a dev, and so we are helping them do that, and then slowly ramping up with when it becomes easier to use small indie developers. But our final goal is actually players becoming creators. This is inspired by what I was seeing back many years ago in Second Life. The beautiful thing was that the game itself was built within the game. And I think that this is a feature that is building the metaverse within the metaverse is something that I really love and be passionate about it. So I want creators to be able to create whatever they want. The problem that happened in Second Life, though, was because they had and they still have so much technological advancements that it's a huge case study that you could stay hours talking about it in terms of technicalities. But the cool thing was that literally anybody could start creating by assembling boxes and prims and so on. And many of my friends were literally people that in real life either had issues of mental, physical, whatever, or anyway they in the real world they were just not expressing really what their true potential was, but inside Second Life they really expressed the true potential, the true creative potential, and it was so mind blowing to see people that maybe they just their powerful expression of themselves was so amazing and so evident. So that's why I'm not sure if I'm making it clear, but that's why I strongly believe that anybody has potential to be a creator. Anybody has potential to build things. And the thing that burned Second Life, though, you know what it was, apart from the fact that Facebook came out and people started migrating into Zynga games and so on, you know, because they found that this is a little bit controversial, by the way, with the current metaverse, but land and plots are actually not a good thing because you get lost very easily. They get full of junk content very easily, and so that's why Facebook gained more momentum, because you literally click the button and you enter a boxed game where people just would do what was meant to be into that game. But with Second Life, instead, they had to search, and then there was land, and then you could get lost. So that's why actually I don't see so much potential in splitting into plots. The reality that we're seeing lots today is with plots, and again, this is my personal opinion, so please just bash me on it. But I think that plots are a very good parallel with this thing I've seen with NFT fractalization. Fragmentation. I don't even know. Fractalization. I don't even know what they call it. And it's pretty much Ponzi. I mean, there is no other. It's just finding value out of nothing, and so that's why in Second Life, basically, if you could buy an island, everybody would stay on their own island because you were customizing everything, and so in my vision here, I wouldn't put plots. I mean, if somebody wants to build something that with plots that it will make sense, okay, but it's completely out of my focus, at least. But creators economy and creators are into focus for sure. And let's talk a little bit more about our so the way we are executing our plan today is we actually have a first-party game. This is a real card game. I've met the creator of Ambal Tournament Physical. It's a physical card game that is going to release on Kickstarter very soon. Actually, I'm going to drop a link in chat. And actually, he is in Japan, and we met, and he decided to join Fragcolor, which is amazing. And we are signing an agreement to have the digital IP, but it's very cool because, as I was showing you the fragments before, the digital IP agreement is very interesting because he's still keeping all the royalties, basically, because that's our system. So the all fragment thing, to be honest, and our mission is to decentralize game studios. And I think that's the most powerful thing. And this is one of the examples. Like, he's gonna join us, but his game is gonna be decentralized anyway, and keeps all the royalties and stuff. But one very cool thing that it's very relevant, maybe for our conversation, is that we decided to pick a card game as first test study because we have a big plan on the multiplayer on-chain gaming side. And as you can imagine, if we started with a Twitch game or an FPS and so on, we probably would have asked ourselves for big trouble. So a card game is not real time or not Twitch, at least, and so it allows us to actually understand better and model better the way we think we are solving the decentralized networking and gaming itself, which I will give a little more details about. Yeah, we're cooperating also with other artists. Brian is a friend of mine. with small games. So yeah, the key thing is, and I would jump to the blockchain infrastructure, is that we actually have just as of today, we only have the single player experience, and that's something that I think is cool, because we have this substrate sidechain that we are building and planning and hiring for it. That is literally white room, and it's gonna be a cool thing to build together with people that is nowadays joining. So we focused though on the single player and all these distribution of creative. So I think it's probably quite unusual for the space, but I think it makes sense, or at least it made sense for us. So the front facing and market and so on, and so these fragments I showed you before are on those NFTs are on Ethereum. We could use any Ethereum chain theory. It's EVM. To be honest, we kind of say that we are chain agnostic. To the degree that I have contracts also on Flow, for example, but I think that I mean I used to work for Ethereum. I'm more attached to it. I think Ethereum is where you should be right now. But I'm not a fan of being stuck on something. So for me, it's more like where it makes more sense, we would be. And in terms of substrate, then I think it's the best for these points that you see here. So decentralized database, so keeping player states and game states, permanent storage, and in-app currencies, and anyway, all sorts of things that need more control. Substrate is very powerful because, first of all, you can program your own palettes, which are not just are more powerful than smart contracts, because you can literally customize the way the whole every single bit that of the runtime of the architecture itself, it can be customized. So that's extremely powerful. Well, it's very difficult to do that in. Imagine I was in talks with Polygon because they recently did this. I don't know. They rewrote a little bit the Ethereum clients, but it's still quite complicated to vivisect and edit a Geth client is quite complicated. But if you substrate is pretty much organized to be modular, so that was our biggest selling point. I'm not really again. I don't care what tech I use. I just want to use the best tech. And for now, I think that there is no other solution on this. And the idea about I know that we talk about this with Ed many times. The idea that we have is to use something we call, let's see if I can switch this tab, lazy validation. Oh yeah, I can, sorry. So it's sorry, I don't really like the way this came out, but I did it on Sunday while extremely busy. I hope I can make sense out of it. But our idea is that games don't really need real time consensus and finality, and so finality can be achieved. Games usually have very defined events. No, Overwatch. For example, as a match, or any FPS as a match, or in World of Warcraft, you have an instance run, and I think this is the sample I put here. So PvP matches and so on. So you can definitely isolate events. Of course, there's open world events. That's a little more tricky. We will have to figure it out. But let's just focus on the fact that games have matches, let's say, and so. What you can do, and and it's difficult if you use Unity and Unreal again, but with the tech that we're building, then by the way, the language we're building is called Chainblocks. It's on GitHub. But so having this allows us to actually literally store everything. So literally store what happens during everything relevant. I'm not talking about storing animation state changes, yes, but I'm not talking about storing the matrices of the bones. So storing the relevant things, so generally what happens on the network. And so, of course, some transaction will still happen, switch build, trades, instant setup, and so on. So there's still things that make sense because they are anyway, they don't require extreme fast speed. But what we're doing is storing everything, and another bit is local machine off-chain. So our focus is a lot on basically, while most of today's blockchain interaction, whether it's DeFi or gaming, gaming not so much, but in general, blockchain interaction is just RPCs. So your client is a dumb machine that does almost nothing, just queries nodes, get nodes about doing RPCs on smart contracts. We are trying to shift this focus to the client. So the clients do much more rather than, and what the chain does is making sure that the clients behave, basically. And so that's why our runtime is open source, and it's a key component that will do many of the validations, many of other things that generally are done today a lot on via RPCs on nodes. So, and to go ahead with this, we assume fair play, otherwise it's 4 hours wasted. We're using P2P protocols. I was actually the lead P2P engineer for this Ethereum client I was working on, which is the Nimbus client, by the way. And so after this is done, we pretty much transact with the validators, and basically it gets validated. If somebody cheated, we slash. If not, we distribute final reward, and you can redeem on NFT chain. And the idea here is we don't even need to store the intermediate state, because it's now irrelevant and can be purged. So that's what we are trying to build with the substrate sidechain. Do you have anything here? Oh, no.
Sorry to interrupt.
Please.
I have a question about this.
Sure.
So to me, I mean, maybe not the technical details, but the overall structure looks very much like a state channel, or what we are doing with game channels. Is that correct? So basically, that's what you mean by lazy validation.
It depends on the. So I think it's sort of correct, but correct me if I'm wrong. With state channel, you still transact, but you send signature around, right? And then.
Well, it depends, I guess, on the concrete implementation, but somehow you need to record the data in a way that can be verified, right? So even in your system, the records everything thing would need to include signatures of what everyone does at what time. So in a sense, that looks exactly like it to me, except what you have not in your diagram here is that with state channel, if people agree, then you don't even need the validators. But I guess that's something you just have not on the slide, and which you would do in your system as well.
I think that's actually the critical. Maybe this is actually the critical difference, though.
Okay.
But we're actually in the process of implementing it. So we've used state channel a lot with storage and actually payment channels and some project I worked on. And now that you said it and you mentioned it, that is exactly the difference. The fact that we don't actually collect signatures. And so what happens on the validator, and again, this is something that we will. I'm curious to see how it plays off. But the validators itself, via this language that we built, basically, we collect everything, and it's not signed, and there is no zero knowledge. We're not going through secrets. It's just data of everything going on. The validators will play back very fast.
Yeah, but if I cast a spell in the raid, then how can the validators know that I really did that and not the others claim it if I'm not signing it?
Because we compare with many other of the nodes, and
so you just assume that the majority of nodes is honest in a way.
Yeah, but it's up to discussion. So in the end, we might end up being having these kind of problems.
Yeah, it could definitely work out. Then you just end up in a way that is not, trustless, but it's more like a proof of stake network or something.
Yeah, that's why actually I will probably paste it here. There is already some experiments going on using this. I'm not sure if you guys are aware of Arweave, the blockchain.
Yeah, slightly.
Yeah, but they have this thing called Smart Weave, which is I'm not sure if you guys have seen it. I will post maybe some links about it. But the idea is that it is highly inefficient if I say it with words, but it's actually efficient. So what they do is that every node, so of course there's caching and checkpoints, but basically, in theory, if you want to synchronize, you would have to play back the whole chain all the time. So every new transaction, and that's the tricky, interesting. But I will post the articles because it would be a too long. I actually post a PDF of Coin Network, which are friends. But something that you might want to have a look at and
yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So this thing of gradual consensus, and I'll post a little more links if you guys want to. It's basically, they call it storage-based computation, but it is very similar to state channels, and it's actually that something that it would be interesting to talk about even in the future together, because we have to find a definitive solution. The price here is that what they do with our weave is, because recently they released something. There's a tiny bit of centralization. I will post my last link. But what we want to do is that's obviously not having any bit of centralization.
Yeah, I mean, I can definitely see it work in the way you described, where you kind of have just a network that is a bit like proof of stake, and if the majority of the people attest to it, then you assume it's correct, and it's not completely trustless, but maybe it still works in practice and might be more efficient or whatever.
Yeah, no, that's exactly it. Because since all these players are handing off to validators, and the validators play back, and so it subs to the validator. So maybe that's the bit you mean, the trustless bit, right? Because you.
No, I mean what I mean is that I have to trust kind of that the majority of nodes that record my data is correct, and not I prove it by my signature. And if I don't, then they can do nothing. But I have to trust that majority of stake is fair.
Yeah. I strongly believe that this will be a problem eventually, but we will still try. The problem I see in this is exactly the fact that all of the players, let's say there's 20 people doing this raid, they don't even play the raid, but they craft this data perfectly. And this is the challenge we have to solve. And because and eventually we might actually use signatures or zero knowledge or something, but it's definitely possible that these players craft the data perfectly so that the validators don't detect any cheating, but instead these guys never play the game, so that would be a very big challenge that might end up being.
But it might actually be fine in a way, right? If you use state channels and all the people craft data with the signatures, even without playing it for real, but somehow then it's fine. And in that sense, if you assume that people who stake coins or whatever on that network, you except for this one thing that if the majority wants to cheat me, then they can in a way. Then otherwise, I mean, it's fine if they never played. Of course, the game should not just give out gold for free for each played game or whatever, because then you will always get bots in the way you described. But if it's more like a PvP thing, then I think you probably don't care about that.
You're right. Actually, even if you do signature and stuff, one thing that we might have to figure out is proving time. I guess proving the space time that they actually played the game. So, but that's something that
only if it's really relevant. I mean, maybe it's not even relevant. I mean, if people want to pretend they played a game and someone won and someone lost, and they all agree that they want to do that, then
you're right.
They can't just do that, I guess. And the game should be designed in a way so it doesn't hurt the overall economy.
Yeah, I see what you mean. It could be external parameters that prevent them spamming with RAID instances. That's like a weak lock. That even if they play or not doesn't really matter. I understand. Yeah. And so but that's the difference with state channels. I think the fact that we want to delegate. This is something I actually proof of concepted a couple of years ago. And I think it might work. So the proof of concept was recording a big event with many players and how much storage and how much playback ability there was, and the results were pretty good. So, and I think with new hardware and so on, it could be quite interesting to see. So, but that's our plan, and I think. But again, I'm quite open to anybody joining or your opinion, guys, or anything. But I think substrate is probably the best choice we have today to achieve this in terms of backend. Partially the reason is that we are using Rust a lot also. But and I think that it's, the only scary thing of Substrate is that they break the API every single day. So that could be a problem. All right.
How far are you in development? Have you started already with some, or is it still doing kind of research and planning?
So on this multiplayer / decentralized gaming / we are pretty much getting started now.
Okay.
I have found probably actually wish me luck, a very good engineer, and I will talk to him another time today. That will probably be the lead engineer. So I will give you pretty much I gave you the overview of everything. I will just tell you what's the current state of Fragcolor. So we will. I pretty much started this alone with chain blocks and this language and the game engine itself around 2 years ago, but I had also a day job and so on, so it wasn't really my main focus. So as you can see here, the red parts have some progress, but the green parts have no progress. Well, actually, it's starting now. But what happened was that I joined, and this is maybe relevant for you guys if you want to fundraise or anything. I could give some tips. So basically, I joined the Outlier Ventures Basecamp Accelerator program in this May. I've met the CEO, Jamie. He's very visionary in the sense that even if you have a crazy idea, you can pitch to him. And this is something very rare in this space, to be honest. This all technological stack, Fragcolor itself and stuff, in the beginning, and I think Ed saw a 0.2 version. So Jamie saw a 0.1 version, but I think Ed could tell you that there was lots of evolution in terms of pitching, in terms of what we were storytelling and so on. So yeah, I think that while joining an accelerator could be and going into this VC thing could be something that you might hate, I think it's very useful because I was alone very much as a solo founder and very fast. It gave me power and psychological power, but also mostly psychological actually, to find more co-founders, to find more people, to find more advisors, to talk with investors, and so today, after all these, I'm hopefully closing a very good round with pre-sales of the token, and so yeah, I mean, I just wanted to. You can ask me anything if you have any problem with fundraising or anything, but my message here is, well, some of you guys are already well funded, but I don't know, some of you maybe not, but there's also money in the space, and this is a good time to raise, so do it. and we have a token design, and maybe I can spend just a minute about it, and there's a very relevant thing with those fragments we're building. So we are allowing people to use the Frag token to stake on games, and this is a way to replace review systems. So content curation. So literally, if you like game, you can stake some frags on the game, and what does happen in that case? You get skin in the game. So every transaction that happens with value that happens on that game will give back to the stakers and curators a small percentage of profits. And transaction in our system are mostly Ethereum and some other currency on the in-game. So this is something, and the Frag token also has many other things like permanent storage, of course, foundation, and DAO. We are really burning them with an oil with the legal aspects about this, then the validators and so on. So yeah, I could talk more about this, but I don't know how you guys are in terms of time. But yeah, token design is very important as well if you wanna raise money and do something cool in this space. The legal aspect is terrible though. Okay, do you have any, how do you want to structure it? I think it's 12 here, but I mean, I can go on. I have no meeting after, but
I think we got a pretty good overview. If people have to drop off because they're busy or something, or they have to be somewhere, that's obviously fine. We've been on the call about an hour. We probably have a little bit less than an hour of recorded material, but that's obviously fine. It can be longer or shorter, whatever. I think it's time to see if there's any more questions if people want to jump in and whatever else. I think one of the things which was interesting for me, which I only just learned now, was kind of your exchange with Daniel gave me some things to think about, because I had never really put a lot of thought into that. I mean, I know that traditional games don't tend to really have signed transactions or signed actions. And I'm very much used to the way, I guess, like in Zaya language, that you would sign every action and every single action is checked, I guess, more or less in real time, I suppose, or it's maybe not. It's kind of, anyway, we'd get into the weeds there. Obviously, Daniel from Zaya here, they obviously have two ways. One is the state channel way, and one is, I guess, not the state channel way. I don't know what's a nice way to put it. I always struggle for like a good explanation of how to describe it, and I end up spending a lot of time. So it's kind of like an off-chain VM for in both ways. Either their state channel approach or their normal approach. I don't know. It's like an off-chain VM, and I guess that's also even what Bruno was getting at earlier, whenever he was talking about or trying to compare what you're doing with what Cartesi have. Is very much a familiar way, and so. As I think through what you're doing, you know, obviously one of the things that I'm trying to always get my head around is, on the one hand, it almost sounds like you have an off-chain VM, and then at other times it's because there's fragments and the fragments sit on chain, there's almost like there's some sort of logic that sits on chain, and so I'm trying to imagine, is the execution on chain, or is it more that the code is some sort of reference which is held on chain, and then you would download this code which is held on chain, but the actual execution is actually really offline. It's just that there's like a master version of the code that people can refer to, which could be on GitHub, but in this case, you're saying we actually have some chain somewhere, and it's not, it's your own substrate chain, which is holding the logic fragments, and that's like your source of truth. And as long as people can all refer to this substrate chain to pull down the source of truth, everyone can agree, in theory, but then all the computation is off chain, if I've understood correctly, and then you could sort of commit like the end state or something on chain for the validators to check and say, okay, this looks like a good match. The computation that's happened off chain, say in the last hour or so, is now valid or good, which is kind of I think that's that feels state channel like, and maybe it's not the exact because you're not signing every message, but this is me kind of trying to get through your technology and understand kind of like the top to bottom of where things are held and where things are executed, because that's obviously the main thing for decentralization or decentralized gaming, is where are things executed and how well can you trust what has been executed. And then obviously having some sort of nice sort of system for rewards and resolution. Anyway, so that was almost more of a comment than a question, but you can probably tease out something to reply to.
It's very good. It's very good. So basically, you can I just answer to that? Were you adding? So no, basically you got it. So we are trying to shift more on the local machine. So of course, our goal is to not have servers, not have clients, but just nodes, and the local machine, the client time computation is the biggest part. But that doesn't mean we don't have smart contracts and so on. The substrate chain will have some custom smart contracts that will be used mostly, for transaction, action hours, value, things that you really want transactions in the traditional sense to happen. But the most bits where a game, kind of example I can say, the combat or the movements or something. These kind of things we don't really think that they are necessary on the to transaction chain, and anyway it would be a huge limit in terms of real time and Twitch gaming. But it's exactly correct what you said. The fact that what we have today is, and that's why we're doing it on Ethereum, but we could do anywhere else, is storing the data on chain. And obviously the observation, you could have it on IPFS, you could have it on GitHub. It's completely correct, but we kind of think on that the value of having stuff on Ethereum is higher. This is literally economical value. So you can actually, in the smart contract, you could just load from Arweave everything, or load everything from our PFS. But we flag that NFT or whatever it is as tainted, because it's if a PFS, I mean the file could disappear. But so I want to. I'm not sure if it's a crazy goal, and I'm happy to hear opinions from you guys. But for me, it's like if there is a catastrophic event and somebody had kept Ethereum nodes alive because they had lots of value, you can still find back your games because they were fully stored on Ethereum rather than being stored randomly on. So I mean, it's probably crazy, but I find it more valuable than GitHub. But just a second, actually GitHub is very good because they sometimes do the Arctic Vault thing, to be honest. But the fact that the chain also has this provability. Do you remember the traditional Windows certificates? Is your software certificated, or your kernel drivers need a certification? So the chain kind of gives you this guarantee that the executable that or the piece of script, whatever it is certified by Ethereum finality. So these are the 2 points. And just to add another word is, I don't really believe that users will ever get it, but I believe that creators might get it, and I believe that collectors might get it. But so I wouldn't set it as my. I didn't set it as my, investors pitch goal, because the investors just want to buy Axie, which is a centralized game with printing money. So and no offense to the Axie, because I know the guys of Axie, they are very cool guys. It's just that they had the vision, it worked, and happy for them. Me. Does it make more sense?
Yeah, I'm getting towards a better understanding. So the actual fragments themselves, do they sit on Ethereum main chain? They do.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense. So that's kind of like the
EVM.
Okay, yeah. I mean, of course, solution could be on Polygon or whatever, but I guess so. The main thing is, because of the economic value of the Ethereum main chain, if you have your fragments there, then those are the ones that will have the theoretical best longevity in terms of surviving, like World War III or whatever. It's
I mean,
compared to some other random chain, for example.
I don't know I guess you guys agree with this vision, though. At least you guys. I mean, I don't want the World War III, of course.
But no, of course.
The sense of everything's on chain.
Something catastrophic that we don't expect, we don't. But if it's like if we could somehow have something which persists regardless of what happens in one particular area. I mean, to be honest, if World War III happens, then it might be that forget about it. Ethereum's not even going to be here, so we have bigger fish to fry. But at least in some theoretical sense, okay. I think that's part that I maybe misassumed. I think I was even thinking that the fragments would be on the substrate chain. I know that you could. I know you could, but I'm not saying that's. I see. Sorry.
So, and it is really, they could, but it is really, and they will, but it is really up to the users and the value they want to give to it. So as you can see today, the smart point, the unique pointers to JPEGs of Larva Labs and so on create lots of value. Imagine if you also have the whole data on Ethereum, and there is this economical value behind it also, apart from wars and.
So then a question would be is, because obviously it'd be difficult to store absolutely every single thing onto Ethereum because of, this is where I need you to correct me. So how much would we store in terms of, would it just be like just a hash or some metadata, or what is it that you
Oh,
would?
no,
What would you store there? And what
yeah.
wouldn't you store there? Should I say? Sorry.
As much as we can. I can tell you a benchmark. We can store 64 kilobytes, which is definitely, it's not small at all. 64 kilobytes is a could be a decent JPEG. Just to say a parameter. But anyway, probably everybody knows what 64 kilobytes is, and the cost is just 500k gas, which is less than a DeFi transaction. So that's on Ethereum. Of course, I wouldn't say you would. There's games. I don't know what was the game lately that was huge. I played. Microsoft Flight Simulator. I think it's tearing me a terabyte. I don't even know. 600 gigabytes.
Yes,
I mean,
huge.
games are becoming huge, and so I wouldn't assume that you would store everything in there. And I think this is something that the guys of Zaya also have been thinking about it, or anyway, the way they think about it is that if the game is big, you still have clients. So it's the traditional. Imagine this. You still own the CDs of some of the games. So if the game is huge, you still have clients, and clients are anyway distributed. If you like, I don't know, World of Warcraft or whatever game it is, and there is a fatal event, you still own the clients with the assets, with the models, with the big textures, with the big stuff. What is on chain though is the logic. What is on chain is the way that those assets are used, and so on. Obviously, everything could be on chain potentially, but there is a little bit of if you're making a game like Call of Duty or Warcraft or so on, you probably want to have beefy clients with good assets, and you don't want to spend. On Ethereum is unrealistic. On our Weave, I think I calculated that. How much was it? 1 gigabyte is about $14,000. I'm not sure. There is some calculator.
One gigabyte on a Weave is, I think, more like $15 at the moment.
Okay, no, $15 1 gigabyte, so 1 terabyte.
Yeah.
I think 1 terabyte is around. Okay, thank you, Daniel. So our Weave is actually decent. I know Sam is amazing. I like what they're doing. I know Al of Koi. We're in talks. Actually, if you guys want any introduction, just let me know. But I think I like what they're doing with the Weave. It's just that for me, the friction with the Weave is you need to get my users or our users, if it's your system, to pay R to store their things. So that's why and I couldn't reach a deal with they, because they of course they want to keep R token value, and so that's why we are thinking to use our own storage solution. But I would. I like what they're doing. I'm still hoping that we can find a way to make it work, but storage is a complicated problem, by the way. I know that the company I used to work for is working on a storage solution, but I don't believe that Filecoin is too complex for me. I think our Weave is decent, but I'm curious actually to hear from you guys if you have anything about storage in general, because it's an interesting problem. But yeah, I mean, as I said, a huge game, clients, files, and so on can just sit on your desk as a ROM of the game. So there's many ways to approach it.
Yeah, I mean, one thing that I could see there as like an issue. I see people are popping off. Thanks for coming, guys. For if you have a fragment of, say, an NFT of a house or something, you could store some pixel art on Ethereum quite easily within 64 kilobytes. So you can see that an artist can get rewarded for putting on this little pixelated house and whatever else, that fragment sits on chain, and that's easy. If, like you're saying, if it's like a huge game where you need to have almost like CDs, or you have your the full game client, then obviously if I create some piece of art which is huge files, it seems harder to put that onto as a thing. Like if my actual image was like megabytes, I suppose you could maybe like hash it and put the metadata on or something, but it's just kind of to tie up together this nice solution where you have where people can
that's exactly what's happening.
borrow and buy. Okay, because if someone wants to use a fragment and they got to pay some royalty for it, but then you've obviously got to have some way of like matching it up.
Yeah, no, actually, if you want to load the R right now in the language, you just type R and then the transaction hash, and in turn, this code that you load the Weave asset is actually stored on Ethereum though, and hashed as well. So that it's verified. You know what I mean? It's this nested hashing is in there, so you are sure that what the people is loading as that R was what they meant to be loading because it's written on Ethereum. So the hash is stored in there. Yeah. And the only thing that I dislike of our Weave is, but that's just a note, by the way. I like that with IPFS the hash is directly connected with the content. I think with our Weave it's a transaction hash, so it's derived in I don't know if you guys know more, but I think it's not strictly connected with the file itself, and our Weave itself doesn't promote deduplication. So, but while IPFS is automatically deduplicated. So,
yeah,
but these are things I don't care personally because it's out of my scope. But just
yeah, it's a little bit of a pain because obviously for an artist they would. I mean, I guess some of this is probably even more of a social problem, which maybe won't be solved perfectly with technology, which is artists getting paid for their work, their file that they upload. And of course, someone could just make some modification and have really a duplicate, which is just a minor modification to an original file, and then someone could just claim that it's theirs, right? I'm not saying you're going to have to solve that, but you can imagine that it could be some headache down the line.
But I think this is already happening. I mean, it's not something that we probably need to care in general, but one thing I noticed with NFTs and artists, I mean, this is completely a little bit, yes, on topic, but in general, it's a general thing for NFTs. It's generally what collectors buy is the connection with the artist. So even if there is a dupe or somebody else makes a dupe, it's known. The community knows this guy is an imposter, and still the value of the original one. It's not the file itself. So what I'm trying to say, I'm not trying to justify the pointer to a JPEG of chain, but honestly, actually, it is a value because it's a straight connection between you and the artist, and this is something that I have to acknowledge. But of course, if this connection with you and the artist, and also there is an asset on chain, I think that it's stronger.